Despite the fact that March is a long month and it feels more like a year, I only read a couple of books, but you know, it's better than nothing. Because I also finished a book. Like, writing a book. Hello friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Katie, and today I'm going to be bringing you my March wrap-up, April TBR, and my TBR takedown update, if you can believe. We are almost 4 months into the year. Wild to me. Wild. So we have a couple of books to get through, so I'm going to dive straight in. The first book that I bought in March was actually a March release, and that is Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare. This is the second book in the Last Hours trilogy. I gave this a 3.75 stars. I thought it was a pretty good sequel. I thought it was decent. As far as Shadowhunter books go, not my favorite by a long shot. I think Chain of Gold was better. I also think the writing quality in this was slightly lower than I'm used to for Cassandra Clare. Felt like there was a lot of extra words, a lot of extra sentences. It could have been tightened up a lot and edited a lot to be a lot cleaner. Just from my personal opinion, based on what I know of her writing style, I do know she's pretty verbose, but I still, even for her, it felt a little bit clunky. I wouldn't say this book is boring, but this book is a lot of talking, which I'm totally fine with because I really like her characters talking. But it does have a trope at the end of it that I hate, where the trope of misunderstanding, miscommunication, where one of the main characters is like overhears a conversation with their love interest is having with another person, and they think it means one thing when in reality it means another thing, and it grinds my gears, and I kind of hate that. But I also think that this storyline with the Shadowhunters is getting a little bit boring and a little bit stale. I still really love the characters, and I still really love the conversations that she has and the relationships that she builds. But as far as prose and plot, it was kind of a flop for me, but I love the characters enough that I will read literally them talking about breakfast and the weather. So that's why it gets a 3.5 stars out of enjoyment. Not the best book in the world, but pretty fun. The second book I read was also a new release, and that is Bridge of Souls by Victoria Schwab, aka V.E. Schwab. This is the third and final book in her middle grade Cassie Blake series. It's about a young girl who can see ghosts. She almost died the previous year, so now she can talk to ghosts and step through what is called the veil, which is where the ghosts are, and she helps vengeful ghosts move on. This is the third book and kind of the ending of this arc of the series, from what Victoria Schwab has said. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I think it was really enjoyable. It's super fast-paced. I really like the characters. As always, we saw my favorite character from the first book, City of Ghosts, Laura. I love her. She's my favorite character in the Cassie Blake series, besides Cassie Blake, obviously, and it was really enjoyable. It takes place in New Orleans, and the vibes from New Orleans are impeccable. Chef's kiss. Perfection. Really love the series. It's a really quick, fast-paced middle grade, not very long, but super enjoyable, and a really nice palate cleanser after finishing a really long, chunky book like Chain of Iron. The next book that I read is a thick boy. Oh, it's a chunky boy. I'm gonna only have to hold it up for a little bit. Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I buddy read this with Stieg Deardahl. I really loved this. I gave it a 4.75 out of 5 stars. Only thing that keeps it from being a 5-star for me is the fact that I don't really want to reread it anytime soon, or maybe ever. Usually 5 stars for me, at least, are books that I would like to reread in the future because I feel like I could get more out of it. I really don't think I'm going to be rereading this 800-page book over again, maybe ever. I think I'll be happy if I never read it again. Not because I didn't enjoy it, but because I feel like it's a little bit thick and kind of takes up a lot of room. Don't know what this is about. It is a high epic fantasy with lesbians, dragons, a great WLW relationship. I love it so much. It was everything that I could have wanted in a high fantasy. I love the world building for this. I love how all of the characters kind of begin to interconnect towards the middle of the book. And once I got to page like 500, I pretty much knew I was going to read the rest of the book that night, and I did. I finished like 300 pages in a night, and it was really good. This book is so heavy though. Oh my god, it's a fucking brick. But yes, I really enjoyed this. This is my first Samantha Shannon book. I'm really looking forward to diving into her Bone season series. I need to put this down, I'm sorry. I'll put a picture over here so you can continue to look at it while I talk. What I particularly enjoyed about this is the relationships. I really enjoyed Sabrin and Ede's relationships. They are two of the main characters. I really loved how their relationship kind of developed naturally over time, and I really loved the way that Samantha Shannon kind of built this image of what Sabrin is and what Sabrin was as like a queen, and then we get that filtered through kind of Ede's perspective of what she knows of their legend and of their history, and then Ede gets to know the woman underneath kind of this mantle of queen, which I really enjoyed. I like kind of seeing this monarch as kind of this icon who's this kind of symbol, and then we learn over time more about her as a person, her fears, her wants, who she actually is as a person, and I really enjoyed that. My least favorite character or point of view was Tane's character point of view, was not my favorite. Despite it not being my favorite though, I think her story could have been fleshed out a lot more. I think we could have seen a little bit more of her family history before we learn more about her as it relates to the kind of plot things that are happening in the world. I really like Nicolae's, and I really liked learning about his past, and especially his relationship with another person, and then how that relationship and the loss of that relationship has affected all of the choices that he made in the book. So I really enjoyed that. There are so many fun, cool characters. I have a couple of like theories about future books maybe, or like headcanons and like crazy crack theories about stuff, which we'll see. I really enjoyed it. It's thick, but it's worth it. So the beginning of Priory is a little bit slow. The first part is more about building the world, so you understand what the stakes and what the histories are, so that the middle bit and the end pay off. My only other criticism and complaint is one that I've seen from a lot of people. I think the big bad of the book should have been a lot bigger, a lot more amped up. I think he should have had a lot more powers, more description, more showing just how titanic and horrible and, gross he is. He felt like a lot of the other, like, worm antagonists, which is fine. It's just like he's like the big one who leads them all, and we didn't really see why he was, as opposed to like the other ones. That's just my opinion on it, but I still really enjoyed it. 4.75 stars. The next book that I read is Truthwitch by Susan Dennard, and I gave this a 3.5 stars. I personally actually really enjoyed it. I think it's a fun fantasy. Would I recommend it to everyone? Probably not, but it's the kind of book that like kind of run-of-the-mill fantasy. It's very typical of what I would have thought, and kind of followed my expectations for the book, which isn't always a bad thing. I actually really like that about some books. Is still an enjoyable read. Was it the best book I've ever read in my life? No. This follows Safi and Assault. They are thread sisters, which basically mean that they are bound together and like family related. There's these things called threads that are connecting people and such to each other. Safi is a truth witch, which means she uses her magic to sense whether someone is telling a lie or a truth. And then Assault is a thread witch, and she sees the threads of people, and they're both kind of outsiders. They're both girls who don't really fit in their normal places. Safi is a domna, which she comes from a like aristocratic family in the north who was sent down south to train and become ready to lead her people eventually when her uncle passes, I guess. And then Isolt is from a tribe that is really hated throughout the Witchlands, which there's plenty of other videos, and Susan Dennard herself has talked about the problematic aspects of that. I personally won't get into it, but essentially this is about them as some crazy stuff happens and some political games are being played, as there was a war 20 years ago and then they called a truce, and now that 20 years is over, and now they're seeing whether this truce is going to be renewed and peace is going to happen, or if war is going to start. And there's a whole bunch of things that happen in relation to that. So I think this book was decent. Again, like I said, I really liked the characters. I really liked the characters' voices. They felt really distinct and unique. Safi's chapters did not feel like Assault's, and they didn't feel like Merrick's, and they didn't feel like Aedwin's, because there's two other male point of views who are the two love interests for them, I believe, possibly. We don't know yet. They were all very different, and I really appreciated that and really liked the voices in there. So that's what I really liked about it. Let's talk about Windwitch. I feel really bad because I really wanted to like this. Having read Truthwitch, I had hoped that Windwitch would be a similar kind of like, not a vibe, obviously, because each book, oh, I'm getting stabbed with a plant. Each book is obviously going to be different and separate from each other, and they're all going to have their different vibes and such. And obviously Truthwitch is about Safi, mostly, because she's the Truthwitch, and then Windwitch is more about Merrick, which that's not the problem. I gave this 2 stars, mostly because I really just didn't enjoy it. The writing style is what really threw me off. It's really different than what is in Truthwitch, and that is something I really liked about Truthwitch, is the voice and the narration style. It is completely changed in Windwitch. There is a character, Aedwin, whose perspective in Truthwitch is very distinct from the others because it's very omniscient and distant. And that makes sense for his character because he is really distanced from the world because he forces himself to be. And because of, past, angsty reasons that we gotta have in a teen YA fantasy. But then in Windwitch, they all felt like Aedwins, which just really just made it hard to read because I don't care. It just made me feel really disconnected from all of them. And I'm also gonna be honest, so much happens in Truthwitch that builds up to this thing, this war that's happening, or all of this political machinations, and then Windwitch feels like it's just doing it all over again. Like, the characters and plots are all like setting up the war that was already done in this one. So I just wanted more action. I wanted more war stuff. I'm also not a fan, really, because all of the characters are separated. I really like the characters' banter and their relationship to each other and their dynamics to each other. The only characters that are together and with the other is Iseult and Adwin, and honestly, they were probably most boring because they're just walking around. Literally, they're just walking around. That's it. That's all they do all book. And then they find a girl, and I mean, like, something happens at the end, but, like, also at the same time, like, nothing happens. We also got introduced to a new perspective, Vivia, who's Merrick's sister, and I like her the best. Her voice was the most unique and felt the best and the most fleshed out, which is weird because I've already met Safi, Iseult, Adwin, and Merrick, and enjoyed their point of views in Truthwitch. So it's weird. I just really did not enjoy it, and I gave it a 2 stars because of that. I don't think it's the worst book in the world. I don't hate it. I don't, and I can see why people would enjoy it. However, I just think there's a lot of cons and, like, things that I just don't understand about it. And there's also this thing, and I think this might just be me being nitpicky, but literally on every single page is a sentence construction that uses the word for, and then like he did this for because of this, like, whatever. Like, I'll read you one. I literally opened page 17, just opened it now, literally looked down and saw one. Which, I'll read you the sentence because it's not spoilery. Thank Nodin, Merrick soon arrived at the hut, for he could keep his winds and temper contained for only so long, and the fuse was almost burned up. She uses for twice in that sentence. The second for is fine. The first for is like used as a transition, as like a because. And it's really jarring for me. Like, the first couple of times it was fine, but then, like, I started noticing it literally on every single page. And, like, this is chapter 1. Literally on the page before that, for Cullen had been something in something 2 weeks ago. Like, because that's, like, kind of low-key a spoiler. But it's because, like, just for is used everywhere, and I don't know if this is just, like, a writing style tick that I didn't notice in Truthwitch, but I don't think she did it in Truthwitch, because I would have probably noticed, but she does it all the time in Windwitch, and every single time she writes, for he couldn't do this, or for she did that, or for she knew that. I just was jarred out of the story, and at one point I'd even considered getting a highlighter and highlighting every single time she used that sentence construction, because it just grated my nerves so bad. And that might just be a me thing that I don't enjoy, but I think it distanced the characters and the narrator and gave too much telling, and I just genuinely think that it made the prose a lot weaker and just irked me. 2 stars. Didn't love it. So we're gonna move on to the last book that I read on March 30th, the day it came out, and that is my most anticipated read of the year, maybe. One of my most anticipated spring release, I would say. And that is Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo, the 2nd book in the Nikolai duology and the 7th book in the Grishaverse. Just to give you a rundown, the Grishaverse is very expansive. There's 7 books. There's the original trilogy, which are these 3 books, and then there's the Six of Crows duology, which are these 2 books, and then there's King of Scars and Rule of Wolves. I'm not going to talk much about the plot of Rule of Wolves, because in order to read Rule of Wolves, you have to have read all of the books in the Grisha series. First of all, if you don't read the other books, you won't get through King of Scars. Just telling you, like, you won't get through it, I don't think, because there's so much, like, lore and stuff that is just known by people who have read the books, like... It's a continuation of the series, which can be confusing because Six of Crows can be read before Shadow and Bone in that trilogy. You will spoil some stuff in the Shadow and Bone trilogy if you do it first, but it should be fine. King of Scars and Rule of Wolves must be followed by having read the Grisha trilogy and Six of Crows. Because there are 3 main characters who are the main point of views who anchor this book: Nikolai, Zoya, and Nina. Nikolai and Zoya's perspective features a character who you meet in Shadow and Bone. Multiple characters you meet in Shadow and Bone, but like specifically 3 characters from Shadow and Bone who are really important. And then they also go and meet some characters from the Six of Crows duology. And so, like, there's just a whole bunch of plot stuff that is a lot better and a lot more interesting if you know the whole history and lore of the books. As for Nina's point of view, it exclusively takes place with a character and, like, that is important in the Six of Crows duology. Like, it is necessary to read Six of Crows to read these books. Anyway, that's my rant for the day. So if you haven't read those, don't read this first. Obviously, this duology. You won't care, in summary. But I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. I cried, I laughed, I threw it almost several times. I cried tears of joy. I cried tears of sadness. There is a death in this book that absolutely wrecked me beyond belief. And the situation just wrecked me. And I don't know how to survive with that knowledge. But it was just so good, you guys. Like, it's such an amazing book. What I think I really love about Leigh Bardugo's style and her books in particular, especially the Six of Crows duology and then the King of Scars duology, King of Scars and Roll of Wolves, is her writing style is so amazing. She gets all of these tiny details wrapped up in such beautiful action and keeps the story moving and flowing at a really nice pace, while also giving you the necessary details to anchor you into the story and into the world, which I think is a really amazing skill and something that I personally like to study whenever I read Leigh Bardugo's books, which is the reason I gave this 5 stars, because I would like to reread it at some point, because it's just so good. So fantastic. There's so much fun stuff in it. There's so many amazing themes and such. Zoya is my favorite character beyond a shadow of a doubt. Love her so much. It's great. Can't tell you anything else about it because spoilers. So, alright, so let's move on to the books that I bought. You've already seen all 3 of the books that I bought this month. Obviously, I read 3 books that I bought, which is Chain of Iron, Bridge of Souls, and Roll of Wolves. I only bought these 3 this month. First, I'm going to show you the books that I'm hopefully going to read in the month of April. Let's first talk about the 2 books I've been putting off because I'm afraid to read them because I know I'm going to love them, and then I'm not going to have them anymore, and then it's going to be like sad. I do this to a lot of books, honestly. And these are 2 books that have been on my TBR since February, and that is Kingdom of Copper and Empire of Gold, both by S.A. Chakraborty. This is the 2nd and 3rd book to the City of Brass trilogy, or the Daevabad trilogy. I'm so excited about these. I literally talk about them all the time. So the next books that I would like to read, I know are going to be a little bit surprising, considering how hard I just bashed its last book. And that is Sightwitch and Bloodwitch, both by Susan Dennard. These are the 2.5 novella and book 3 in the series. It is recommended on Susan Dennard's Instagram to read Sightwitch before you read Bloodwitch. So I'm going to do that. It's a novella, super short, only like 170 pages. And then I'm going to read Bloodwitch. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, why are you going to read these if you hated Windwitch so much? Well, here's the thing. I really want to finish out this series. I don't hate it enough that I don't want to finish it. But if it is similar to Windwitch in its style and narrative prose, I'm going to be disappointed. So I think once I get through them, and Adwin's my favorite character personally. I really love him, and I love him, Vivia, and Venice are my 3 favorite characters. So I'm hoping we see a lot of Bloodwitch action in Bloodwitch with Adwin. Honestly, he's the only reason I'm reading this. So who says a dark bad boy who can literally control people's blood? It's a very strong motive to read a book. It's also, they don't take me very long, they're not huge. I might just have to break out the highlighter and highlight every 4 she uses. And then the next 2 are books that were on my TBR from January that I did not get to, and I'm looking to get to because I have put them off and read some other books instead, and now I'm ready to come back to them. The first one is Raybearer by Jordan Efuecko. This is a African-inspired fantasy that is about a young girl who is sent to the capital, I believe, to kill the crown prince. She's kind of been born to do this. There is a curse kind of involved. I'm going to be reading this. It's not very long, and the sequel cover just got revealed, so I think it'll be coming out soon. Hopefully I enjoy this. I've heard Book Talk is loves this. I know I saw a bunch of people on Instagram raving about this as well, so I'm hoping I enjoy it. So I'm hoping to get to it this month. And then my final one, which is one that I also meant to read in January, and one that I also started in January, and then I kind of moved. I just wasn't in the mood for it, and I might be in the mood for it now, and that is Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. This is an Arthurian retelling urban fantasy with a girl main character who's trying to figure out what actually happened to her mom. I've also heard that there's the love triangle trope. However, one of the pieces of the love triangle is in love with the other piece of the love triangle that isn't her. Got some bisexuality things going on in here, which I'm here for and I'm ready to dive into. I have actually gotten back into reading Arthurian things. I just got really mad about Chosen Chosen? What the fuck's it called? That one Netflix show, I think it's Chosen, whatever. And how bad it was. So I want to read some actual good Arthur retellings. So I want to read this one. I want to read The Guinevere Deception, and I am looking forward to Lar Eve's Blackheart Nights. So I figure this one's already on my shelves, so I might as well dive into her while I have them. You know, you feel me? So those are the books that I'm hoping to read in April. Again, I probably won't get through all of them, but you know, a girl can hope. So we're finally to statistics. Can you believe? So my original TBR takedown number was at 84 after February. I read 6 books, which takes me down to 78, which is a great number. Yay. However, I bought 3 books. So that brings me back up to 81, but I'm down to 81 from 84, which is nice and which is good. And the 3 books that I bought, I read in the month of March. So I think that's a pretty good accomplishment since I read the books that I bought. So they didn't go on my TBR. They went on and then came off right away. So barely even on there. I'm excited to read these new books. Let me know what your favorite book this month was that you read. Anyway, that's going to be it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!